The 53rd pick is in. The Eagles have selected running back Miles Sanders out of Penn State. He's not going to have to leave the state. He's just coming over to Philadelphia, a running back who fans, I think, can be very excited about. Friend, let's break it down. Instant reaction.
What I love about Miles Sanders, Amy, is that he is extremely well-rounded. 5'11", 211 pounds. This guy went to the combine, had a very good workout out in Indianapolis. And what really stands out to him for me is his ability to make the first man miss. Very slippery in the open field. He's not afraid to lower his shoulder into that first defender, run through first contact. He loves to pick up those extra yards. So when you look at Miles Sanders, he can be moved around the formation. He can be used as kind of a factor back outside the structure of the formation, but then also will pick up some of those dirty yards. So a really well-rounded player that's going to fit in very well for Doug Peterson's offense.
A guy nationally that maybe a lot of people didn't know until this past year because he was behind Saquon Barkley, a lot of good running back talent at Penn State in recent years. But a guy I had the pleasure of covering at the Under Armour All-America game his senior year of high school, and I have a close relationship with the head coach at St. Thomas Aquinas High School, Roger Harriet, who was coaching the running backs that year. And I said to him, what do you like? Who are the guys that stand out to you? And he said, Miles Sanders is maybe the best player on this field right now. He is the real deal. And maybe not a lot of people know about him, but he is going to be a really special player. And so ever since then, I've had my eye on Miles. He had an amazing game at the Under Armour game. And I was waiting for his career to blossom at Penn State. Took a little bit of time being behind a
freak show.
A freak show like Saquon Barkley. There you go. But yeah, I think a lot for Eagles fans to be excited about. And I did interview him during that process as well, and just a really, really nice kid, very humble, and a guy who is going to be a great team guy for the Eagles as well. So a lot for fans to be excited about.
You know he's got some patience because he had to sit behind Saquon Barkley for a couple of years. But when you look at Miles Sanders, like I said, one of the things that really intrigues me, the Eagles go and they trade for Jordan Howard, right, who is a great early down runner between the tackles. Then you've got a guy like Miles Sanders who, when he was at Penn State, was moved around the formation often. So they moved him into the slot. They moved him out wide. So now you have a guy that can provide a little bit of a different dimension in terms of how he was used. He can do some things in the passing game, and that's really something that this Eagles offense will continue to look for, is guys that can impact passing downs, provide a big-time weapon for Carson Wentz in the passing game, especially when you've got those two tight ends on the field, Amy. We'll talk about 12 personnel and all the different matchups they can create when you've got Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert on the field. Now you put a guy like Miles Sanders in the game, and now you don't know as a defense, are the Eagles going to run the ball or are they going to throw the ball? Miles Sanders gives you that versatility. That's one of the most exciting parts about this pick.
Well, and last season, this was a team that struggled to find some consistency in the run game, had a lot of different guys rotating in, some injuries. They add Jordan Howard and now Miles Sanders. So a position now that's going to have a lot of competition and good competition between talented players moving into next season. We're going to go now to our Eagles insider, Dave Spadaro, who was in the room when the pick was made. Dave, I hear you have a really fun story for us about what went down in the room when the Eagles selected Miles Sanders.
Yeah, so what happens, Amy and Fran, is that when the Eagles make a pick, they usually call in the position coach just before calling the player. Well, in this instance, they were looking for Deuce Staley. Where is Deuce? Where is Deuce? They finally got him. They brought him in. And then they told him a name that was not a running back. Howie Roseman gets on the phone and says, "Hey, Miles, it's Howie Roseman from the Philadelphia Eagles." And Deuce went, "What? I got myself a running back," and the whole room exploded. A little fun with Deuce Staley, who is obviously very happy. The complexion, as you guys talked about, of the running back group has changed so much in the last month. Only a month ago, we were wondering who the Eagles' running backs would be. Then all of a sudden, you acquire Jordan Howard in a trade. You draft Miles Sanders. You compete with Josh Adams and with Corey Clement and with Wendell Smallwood. Suddenly, as you say, great competition at the running back position.
Dave, what is the essence in terms of the atmosphere up there? Obviously, everybody's excited. What are you hearing in terms of why they're so excited about Miles Sanders?
You know, look, they play, Fran, you talked about his versatility, how he fits. It's going to take some time with Miles Sanders. There's going to be a learning curve. He's got to be better in pass protection, more polished. Most college running backs, that's the last piece of the puzzle for them, and Deuce Staley knows that very well. But they obviously spent a lot of time with Sanders, who made a visit, actually 2 visits, to the NovaCare complex as part of the Pro Day local as well. So they like his versatility. He's got a lot of tread left on that tire, having served as a backup to Saquon Barkley at Penn State for a couple of seasons. and he just really fits into the offense, moving him around the formation, a weapon in the pass game, explosive as a runner, certainly needs to get better in phases, including the pass pro game, but I think Miles Sanders has a chance to fit in here at some point. We don't know how early, but certainly upgrades the level of competition at running back. All of a sudden, the Eagles look formidable in the backfield.
Dave, we haven't seen the run of the running backs coming off the board yet. We had one in the first round, now Miles Sanders. Do you think that the Eagles were at all surprised that he was available? We heard Howie say yesterday he was so surprised that Andre Dillard was still available with their pick. Do you think they were surprised that Miles was there too?
I'm not sure if the word, Amy, is surprised. They were certainly thrilled. Fist bumps all around the room. What happens inside a draft room is that all of these people who've spent 12 months working on the draft, their time comes on the clock and they have a list of players that they want to go with. Miles Sanders clearly at the top of that list for the Philadelphia Eagles. So when the 52nd pick was made and the Eagles knew that Miles Sanders was their guy, everybody in the room elated, fist bumps, handshakes, hugs, a very, very happy group of Philadelphia Eagles, including owner Jeffrey Lurie in there. The Eagles offense in 2 days here, a young left tackle, a young running back, really adding weapons to surround Carson Wentz. We've talked about this all offseason. You want to make Carson Wentz as great as he can be. And you do that by making the running game better, which the Eagles have done with Jordan Howard and now Miles Sanders, and making sure that the offensive line continues to be great for years to come. And they've done that as well in this draft.
Dave, the owners' meetings in Arizona seem like they're forever ago now. I remember the big topic of discussion was the running back position for both Howie Roseman and for Doug Peterson with the media. But what's so interesting is since that point, they add Jordan Howard, who, as we've talked about, has been third in the league in rushing since he's entered the league back a couple of years ago. And then they get a guy in Miles Sanders who is able to carry the load, but just 281 touches over the course of the last 2 seasons. So a lot of tread left on his tires. And I think when you combine both of those guys and their skill sets, they complement each other very well.
Yeah, sometimes, friend, I think the media, the fans were in a hurry to get everything fixed on the roster, address every position on the roster. And the Eagles continue to preach patience, knowing that, hey, this offseason is long. There are many ways to acquire players. The Eagles had been working on that Chicago Bears trade for Jordan Howard for quite a time before it was announced. The deal got done literally a month ago. And now you add Miles Sanders to the puzzle. So you've got Corey Clement coming off the injury. You've got Josh Adams coming off a rookie season that showed a lot of promise. Wendell Smallwood, productive these last couple of years. And oh, by the way, the Eagles with a pick at 57 on the way in just a few minutes.
Right, Dave, we better let you get back in that room so that you can bring us the inside juice on the pick at 57 as well. So thank you.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any more pranks played on the position coaches, what the Eagles will do here at 57. But certainly it was a jovial and celebrated and very excited group of Philadelphia Eagles inside the draft room for pick number 53, Miles Sanders.
Love that. And that's how you know everybody is in a good mood when they're playing jokes on each other. I love to hear that. Great stuff from Dave. I bet the environment is awesome up there. I think a really interesting point that he made was about how the front office and the coaching staff has really decided to invest in building a support staff for Carson Wentz on that offensive line and now in the running game, just continuing to set him up for success with these picks.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best thing you can do anytime you have a young quarterback is you want to continue to help put him in the best situation to succeed as possible. And I think when you add a guy like Andre Dillard, like Dave said, you now add a guy that can impact the run game and the passing game with Miles Sanders. And one part of it, Amy, that we haven't really talked about a lot, we talked about his versatility. He can help on third down. I thought Dave made a great point. He does need to get a little bit better in pass protection. But the other thing about him is that he's not afraid to work between the tackles. Don't get it mixed up here. He's not a guy that's just a satellite player that is going to play out in space. He's not afraid to work between the tackles, get downhill, lower his shoulder into first contact. He is that kind of guy that is willing to finish runs, and I saw that on tape at the college level. So that's another aspect of Miles Sanders' game that I think gets a little bit lost in the shuffle because everybody sees, oh, he had a great combine workout, he did a lot of things in the passing game. No, this guy can be a full-time ball carrier. He showed that this year for the Nittany Nittany Lions.
Yeah, he runs hard. I'm just watching this film here. He runs hard and low to the ground.
Yes.
You know, he has that low center of gravity. He's not the tallest guy in the room, but he's got that thick lower body that is really hard to tackle for defensive lines.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he was that big-time recruit coming out of high school. Honestly,
he was a 5-star.
Yeah, he was a huge recruit. The only knock you could say coming out that's like, oh, this is an issue, was the ball security. He did put the ball on the ground a little bit too much this year, but outside of that, everything else from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, you like everything that he brings to the table. He was a special teamer as well. He can return kicks, so there's a lot to like there with Miles Sanders. And obviously, look, it goes into a backfield now where you've got guys like Jordan Howard, you have Corey Clement, you have Wendell Smallwood, you have Josh Adams, a lot of competition there in that backfield. It's going to be fun to watch all those guys work together both this spring and this summer.
At some point tonight, I know we're going to hear from Coach Doug Peterson, Howie Roseman, and Joe Douglas about this pick, and lots of questions that will be answered then. Do you think that any of them were surprised that Miles Sanders was still on the board? One thing that I was thinking as I'm watching these picks come off the board, a lot of surprises, but you saw a big run of corners and a big run of offensive linemen. Of course, the Eagles got their offensive tackle in the first round, and the cornerback position here on this roster has a lot of competition going on. So the guys that are still available are the positions that you could see the Eagles possibly taking. Do you think they were surprised that Miles Sanders was still available?
I would bet yes.
Because I was.
Yeah, I think if you gave them some truth serum, they would say, yeah, we were a little bit shocked because
I wish we could give
yeah,
them
exactly right. But I think when you look at this running back group, I mean, he was the second one off the board behind Josh Jacobs, and ultimately, a lot of people coming into this week, they thought that Miles Sanders was going to be off the board in that early 40s, 41, 42, 43. He'd last late until the mid-50s, and the Eagles were able to pick him up at 53. So that was a little bit of a surprise. I got to say, at least for me, I did not expect him to be there at this point in the draft. So certainly a huge addition for this Eagles offense.
Yeah, there's been a lot of surprises in the draft so far, especially in the second round. What was the biggest surprise for you? If you need a second to think,
I got to think about that one for a sec.
I can give you mine.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm really just intrigued by the Raiders picks. You know, I have complete faith in Mike Mayock. I'm just so interested in what he's doing, picking Trayvon Mullen, who is a solid cornerback. But now they have two guys from Clemson and one guy from Alabama. So the joke on Twitter was that they're picking guys that played in the national title game, which I guess, hey, like, you know, championship players, right? That's how get winners in your locker room, and they know how to change a culture to a winning culture. But interesting pick. I'm intrigued to see what he will do there with the Raiders.
Yeah, and it was a busy day for the NFC East yesterday. Obviously, so many picks for the New York Giants and for Washington, and then ultimately so far today, only one pick, and that's been for the Philadelphia Eagles. Washington, Dallas, and New York have yet to make a selection. So the NFC East, a little bit quiet so far today. The Eagles making the first, striking the first blow there with Miles Sanders. And again, just excited to see how he can come in and compete. I'm excited to hear Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas and Doug Peterson talk about Miles Sanders. Dave mentioned it. Miles Sanders visited campus here twice. He visited the building, the NovaCare complex, twice this offseason. So he was here on a private visit and then came in again for his local visit for the local pro day just last week. So I think when you look at Sanders, this was a guy certainly that they had their eye on and they were hoping would be there. And he ends up falling there to 53, and a guy that obviously fits what this Eagles team is looking for.
Well, in an age where the running back position has been somewhat devalued, and now you're kind of seeing that tide turn a little bit. You know, the Eagles take a running back in the second round, which is a high for a running back in this day and age as well. So obviously they really liked him enough to take him with that pick in the second round. Of course, we're going to be here all night. Every time the Eagles make a pick, we're going to be breaking it down right away. So keep it right here with Eagles Draft Central, presented by Dietz and Watson on all of our social channels, PhiladelphiaEagles.com. We are not going anywhere, but we are going to take a little break.
This is Mr. Squat.